Hello and welcome to a new podcast series by the local charity, the Energy and Sustainability Centre, also known as ESC. We have crafted 5 exciting, informative and entertaining episodes to educate the island on its journey to net zero. This series is generously sponsored by Zurich on the Isle of Man. So let's get started. In today's episode, we have Clara Isaac, the innovative owner of Recycle.im, a pioneer in promoting effective recycling practices, and Steve Picket, the visionary owner of Best Energy Solutions, a company dedicated to advancing sustainable energy solutions. What are the benefits from actually using sustainable brands?
Yeah, well, I'll probably start off with more from an equipment perspective for businesses or consumers. So certainly when you think of appliances and the energy efficient kind of products that you can get now, so these things, whilst there might be an upfront cost, often that might cost you a little bit more for something that's more environmentally friendly. Generally they last longer. And you get your efficiency savings out of them. So often, although there may be kind of an upfront cost, if you like, of going green, the longer term benefits economically that you'll save money.
And is there still a resistance, do you think, from the consumer thinking, oh, well, this one's an extra, whatever it might be? Are they driven by the price still rather than thinking about the more sort of ethical issues?
Yeah, so without a doubt, the cost of goods does impact people's kind of behaviour, and we have to accept that when you're going green, it's going to cost you a little bit more, and although there's upfront costs, you will save money in the long term. So whether that be through LED lighting, which again will cost you more than a regular kind of bulb, but obviously over a couple of years you're going to get that money back.
On the flip side as well, it is, you have to look at it long term, but there are also ways of kind of being sustainable that can save you a lot of money. So let's take, for example, our consumerist habits, coming from someone who works in waste and resource. We are all at the moment kind of obsessed with this consumerist behaviour where we want to buy, we want to have a different outfit, we want to buy more food, more this, more that, the latest gears, the latest gadgets, but actually the core of sustainability comes from, being sustainable is using what we've got and making it last for as long as possible. So by reducing, fast fashion and reusing things, we can actually save a lot of money. So, we might spend a lot of money on a popular brand at the moment is like Shein. You buy this really rubbish quality clothing which exploits children to make the product, and when actually if you were to use something and not consider the need to have a different item of clothing, you'd be saving a lot of money getting one item of clothing that you reuse, going to charity shops that is, significantly cheaper. And there's so many ways that, people look at sustainability and think, if I do need big appliances, like a new car and stuff like that, the upfront cost is great, but the lifetime saving is beneficial. And then there on the flip side, there are the other things where there is so many ways that if we lived more sustainably, it means we buy less, which means we save a lot of money. So actually sustainability can be putting money back in our pockets. So I think it's a huge benefit to people.
So do you think we need an actual change in mindset, as it were? 'Cause I'm thinking for those who lived, I was fortunate enough not to live through the last war, but certainly if I spoke to my parents and my grandparents, and it was much more a case of the make, do and mend. You didn't have something.
Yeah.
So, if your socks had a hole in it, you darned your socks and you carried on wearing them. Now, of course, you think, in the bin, new pair of socks.
Wouldn't dare do that.
In the bin, because everything's so easy. Do we have to move, you think, our mindsets to more sort of environmentalist rather than consumerist?
Yeah, you see that as well. Now I see it personally, kind of my grandparents and stuff like that, they did live like that. And then there's this kind of era in between where it's a little bit more buy and throw away. And now you see this younger era coming up where they are more sustainably minded. They're not just considering what they're buying, how much they're buying. They're also considering where they're buying it from. So they want to buy it from sustainable businesses who treat their people right, who use the right product. And it's definitely coming, it's a new mindset that's coming about. And although there's definitely an age category that, maybe needs to learn a little bit more about it or maybe get invested a little bit more in it, there's a younger age group that are coming through that are certainly more kind of sustainability conscious, and we'll see that. I see it every day. It's going into schools all the time. People are more conscious about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've been through that disposable society kind of period, haven't we? You know, where we want everything and we want it now, and we want to give our kids everything, and they all have phones and laptops and we you know, cars even at the home. But I do think through particularly things that Clara does, and you get into schools and we educate while they're young, you do get that vibe from younger children when you go into these events and kind of shows that we put on. The feedback that you get from the youth and the enthusiasm they have for the environment kind of motivates you again to go out and do your bit, doesn't it? So I think we've got to just accept that we've been through that period. Generally now people are more educated. There's enough information around now. Mm-hmm. We understand the impact of climate change and these things. So we have to change. And I think we all are. Most of us are kind of trying to do something.
And is there a real generation gap there, as you mentioned, Steve? That there is that thing, isn't it? If you've been brought up, if you're our sort of age coming through, yeah, I've been through a very happy consumerist period. Everything was cheap and everything was disposable. And now we're moving away from that. And it's a case of, yeah, things are still relatively cheap. But you know what? We might actually have to pay a little bit more because, you know, we have to change our attitudes when it comes to the environment and living sustainably.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the economic benefits, I mean, I've recently had solar installed at home. I suppose a little bit of a kind of let's give this a go. I'm in this sector, so I want to be doing all the right things, and it's expensive. But I have to say, there's a kind of a reduction in VAT when you're purchasing those products. There's the Green Living Grant Scheme that you can avail of, which all helps support the cost. And just to give you a bit of a feel for that, so we've installed a 10 kilowatt system at home, and it was costing around about £8 a day before we install solar, and now it costs around about £3 a day. So whilst it's a big investment, you're making definite savings, and then you can feel good about it because actually you're not consuming all that kind of high energy and those emissions that go with it.
I think you know, a big push that's kind of been there a long time in all generations. Yeah, there is a gap of understanding from younger people to older people and everything in between, but I think a common understanding amongst most is supporting local, and that's one thing. People say, oh, it's so expensive to support our local farmers, you know, with vegetables, meat and stuff like that. But actually, you know, the price is very marginal, and in terms of health benefits, the price we pay, you know, to receive something that is local, it's just down the road, the health benefits are so much more significant. So for every £1 you pay of, say, nutrition is significantly more than what you'd pay if you were to buy something that came all the way from Chile that's in Tesco. And you're supporting our local economy. So there's that kind of circular economy there where you're supporting local, you're eating local, you're putting money back into the local economy. And I think island-wide, all age groups, that is understood and supported. There are just certain areas, for example, like fast fashions, and as Steve was saying, investment upfront in energy, where probably the understanding differs across age groups. But, you know, kids will be going home and explaining to their parents what they want to see. And I think eventually, you know, island-wide, age group-wide, we'll all have a much more level understanding.
And do you see that when you say you're going into schools? Do you see that with the kids you're talking to? Now, they have the benefit, obviously, of not paying the bills probably when they're at schools. But do you see them buying into this idea of this is the way we're going to have to live?
Oh, 100%. Kids, you know, when you go into schools, kids almost know so much more than you would expect. So you go in, you know, hoping to help improve their understanding. They know so much already. It's already included in their curriculum. They're really enthusiastic about it, and also they're really enthusiastic about the environment that they're going to live in. So I think it's more taken on board what we're leaving behind, and, you know, people start talking about climate change and think, oh, it doesn't impact me. But I think if you just strip it that one step back, you know, sustainability is all about like preserving what we've got, and, you know, let's kind of put aside the complications of climate change. Resource utilisation is a problem. It is a clear and understandable problem for all. We can't just keep using and then binning. Eventually there'll be nothing left. So we need to consider using what we've got more effectively for the people that we're leaving behind.
And what about recycling? Because again, we're all very, and we were touching on this a little bit earlier on, we all recycle a lot, or are encouraged to recycle an awful lot. And again, you will hear, without a doubt, if you're out and about, there will be those who totally embrace it, and there will be those who are sort of more cynical and say, oh, what's the point? It all ends up going to the same bin. What's your take on that? Because it is one of these things that, yes, we are encouraged to do it, whether it's batteries, whether it's paper, whether it's your bottles, whether it's your cans, etc. And it's not that much of an effort, but is it something which is going to be beneficial when it comes to sustainability?
I absolutely love that you've asked this question, because it is something that, people totally misunderstand across the island, and things have changed significantly with recycling over the past decade. Recycling is something that we should be doing. There are materials which are not kind of economically or environmentally viable when living on an island, but the recycling that does happen on the Isle of Man is materials that have been investigated and have been proven to be the best for our environment, with a big one being your likes of metals and glass. So everyone says, oh, put everything in the bin, it all goes in the same place anyways. Actually, it really, really doesn't. There are people out there working so hard to make sure that doesn't happen. The people at the Energy from Waste plant, the people at DEFRA, the people on the ground, everyone, they do not want to see non-burnable materials at all, no matter what they are, going through the Energy from Waste plant. It causes a significant drain on our electricity generation. It creates blockages. As Steve was saying, things end up going into bottom ash anyways. They then have to sieve that out. You've wasted a load of energy trying to burn non-burnable materials, which ends up in bottom ash, which then needs sieved out, which then gets recycled, significantly degraded. So the answer is yes, recycling is, an exceptional kind of service to have on the Isle of Man. We should all have it, and we should all be partaking in it, especially because 55% of our kind of recycling is glass, which is non-burnable, and it gets recycled here on the Isle of Man. So low transportation, gets utilised on the Isle of Man, recycled on the Isle of Man, and saves us as taxpayers not just energy, but also the money it would take to rectify these problems when going through the Energy from Waste.
And I'll have to ask, because I know I can hear people shouting at the radio already, saying, oh, what does the glass get recycled into? Is it recycled back into bottles, into packaging and such like, and windows, or is it recycled into something else for the building industry or the like?
It's for building industry, so it gets recycled into eco-sand used for construction, and it's been done like that for years and years and years. There is no way anybody wants heavy glass going to the Energy from Waste plant. It costs you as a ratepayer money for that, because it costs £114 a tonne. And as you can imagine, glass is super heavy, the heaviest material of all. And then when you go to take it to be recycled, it's costs next to nothing in comparison to that. And then they utilise that for our roads, our building blocks, etc., etc. It's a fantastic thing to have on the Isle of Man, and one of the only materials, and the heaviest material, that we actually recycle here.
Keen recycler, Steve?
I'll tell you a little story, but just to back up Clara on the glass, it was a research paper that I did at University of Cambridge. I kind of chose that as a subject because I thought it would be quite interesting, and it's one of the few products that is kind of cradle to cradle, and the technology advancements now in producing glass and keeping property and buildings cool or warm is fantastic. So certainly we should all recycle as much glass as possible, and whether that goes back into glass or even building blocks, it's still great use of that waste, if you like. Am I a keen recycler? I've learned to be. I wasn't, I have to say. I spoke to Clara probably about 2 years ago to say, I've got all this waste and now I can only do one bin and not 4 bins anymore a week, because Brad and Commissioners have changed the policy, and it was, I have to say, a bit of a pain at first, when you're used to producing that much waste and just getting rid of it in your bins. But you know what I did? I went and bought some boxes, and I went and bought some storage, and we started to segregate our waste. So tins, glass, paper, cardboard. Now I do have to do a weekly trip to the tip, which I do, and I think it's a pain at first, and when it's raining it's a pain, but you still do it. But you know what? After I've done it, I feel good about it. I feel, you know what, I've done my bit, and I'm not creating all this waste and problems for somebody else to deal with. So I take some responsibility for that. Funny enough, I'm still trying to educate my kids that are in their 20s now to do the same. So, you know, me and my wife do all the work, but I'm happy to do that for now.
And is that an issue then with, again, sort of going across the generations? It's this element of cost, I suppose, for sustainable products. As we mentioned, they could be a little bit higher for the products that are green, products coming from that background. Availability, whether you have a choice of buying one or not. And then also in this particular case of recycling, effort in that sometimes you might need to perhaps make a little bit more effort than just sort of, whack it in the bin, forget about it. Yeah. Are these something, again, are they stumbling blocks or are they generational stumbling blocks?
So I think a little bit maybe generational, but we've got to change the habits. We've got to keep talking about it. And, you know, when Clara does her, you know, her podcast and things, it does enthuse you to get hold of your kind of your waste and your recycling responsibilities, and you do pass that on. I mean, even I'm doing a little for, but even the soil that I mentioned before, only because it's fairly new to me, so I've been learning all about it. And it does make you very conscious when you're kind of monitoring things, how much energy you use. And when you've got that information, you can share that, and you can say, well, hey guys, do you realise, you know, when you go out and leave all the lights on every day, that's costing another £3 when you stop it. You know, instead of just throwing that in the bin and then having to do 2 bins, can you just segregate it a little bit for us? And it is just constantly communicating, if you like, and getting the message over and educating the people around you. Likewise, we were on a project with Junior Achievement this year for the Company of the Year throughout the schools. And probably 25% of the companies were based around the environment. So it just shows you that the youth and our future are really focused on the environment. So hopefully between what we're learning, what they're learning, we squeeze the middle bit and we all just get more environmentally conscious, Howard.
I think we see it from all age groups across the board, because we're collecting from so many houses and everyone is of that mindset. People choose to use us. And so, you know, we're seeing people who have their teenagers and they've encouraged their parents to get involved, right up to people who are elderly and are extremely passionate about the environment and everything in between. But I think it is habit forming. So if you start it, you know, we've had people messaging us this week saying, God, if this ever got taken away from me, I don't know what I'd do, because it's a habit now. It's ingrained in my lifestyle. It's ingrained in my kids' lifestyles. And, you know, it's amazing to see when people do have this kind of available at their fingertips and at home, that kids do follow suit and they're excited to get involved. And when that becomes like our cultural norm, taking that away seems almost bizarre. People come from England and they're like, oh my gosh, why are you putting everything in one bin? My landlord told me to put everything in one bin and this is bizarre and I can't bring myself to do it. And then people are pointing in our direction and they're like, wow, well done you guys for kind of making that jump. And I think you see that in your likes of the shops as well. What you're buying, Tesco probably started off with just a minority of what you'd call like eco-conscious products, and you'll see those ranges start to expand. And I think that's because we're pushing the habit, so it's our consumerist drive that we want to see that, and they will then put that in the shop. But alternatively, you could say, well, is that then putting it in the shop to force us? Maybe it's a bit of both.
Mm-hmm. So casting forward then, looking forward 10 years or so, a couple of decades, a decade, do you think, you mentioned the sort of the cultural norm, is this what it's really about, changing mindsets gradually? Because you only have to go on, you know, I'm sure we all have a look on social media from time to time, either more or less, and you will see those who embrace it and you'll see those who will just not accept it at all. It's just a case of it's all nonsense, it's all, you know, it's all pie in the sky, so we don't have to do any of this at all. It's all being sort of forced on us. Do you think we are going to see going forward change to cultural norms, so it'll just become, you won't really have to think about it, it'll just be the way you live and behave?
I do see it on social media, and I've been a victim of it as well sometimes. But I think, do you know what? We are entitled to our own opinion about anything and everything, and I think you'll find that the majority of us are actually in agreement about where we want to go and about how we want to leave the world behind for our future generations. And maybe sometimes the people that speak up are not representative of the whole population, so it's easy to get kind of a skewed sense of information off social media. But you know, likewise, I think we're all entitled to our own opinions, and I feel positive knowing that a majority of us are really interested in doing the right thing. I definitely don't want to leave this place behind a worse place than I found it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's still people out there that believe the world's flat, isn't there? You know, so we're not going to change everybody's views and opinions on things, but data is there. Our own experiences is there. So we feel climate change, don't we? We're kind of experiencing it as we live today. So I think without a doubt in the next 10 years we'll see an acceleration you know, of lots of initiatives and progress with our sustainability goals, without a doubt, and we'll see the children of today are then becoming, you know, the having babies themselves maybe, and there'll be a different mindset and different habits in place. New technologies are arriving all the time, of course, that help us as well. So I do think the future's bright, or green maybe, but we're ambassadors of, obviously, and we work in this kind of sector. I think we'll see an acceleration.
It's hard to accept though, isn't it? Do you know,
Yeah,
I find it personally really hard to accept that that's what's happening, but I think probably from mine and Steve's standpoint is that we look at it as that we'd rather try and do our best to help than to sit back and watch things. You know, what's we got to lose? We're better off trying to make the best happen than to sit back and just watch it all crumble around us. But, you know, we're all different, aren't we?
Yeah. We'll do our bit.
We'll try. It's super hard.